My name is Jamie. I'm the utility billing supervisor. So I'm going to show you a couple things today, kind of what we do, what everything is, the ins and outs, the background, all of that. So this is a picture of our team. Of course, I'm right there, Jamie, and then there's Melissa Castaneda. She's been here for about 17 years with the city. She has quite a bit of experience and knowledge. Then Joanna Laddick, she has been with us for just a few months now. She's new. She does a hybrid job, so she works inside about 80% of the time. And when our tech Becky is gone, she fills in for her. So she kind of bounces back and forth on that. And then we have Lydia Kaler. And Lydia's been with the city for 4 years now, and she is a clerk. She has lots of knowledge as well. We also have Becky, which is our rodent. She is our tech, but she did not make it into the picture this year. I am sorry, but I will mention her. She does. We have
She's
one
out on
tech.
medical leave right now, so
Yes.
it's not like we intentionally left her out.
Right. She has been out on medical leave. Hope to come back next week. Yay. We have one tech in utility billing. So every on, every off, every disconnect, every lock, every service order to check for a leak, she does it all. It's one person. So sometimes whenever you get a call and we're like, okay, it may be tomorrow morning before we come. That's why, unless it is an emergency, if there's water skyrocketing out of the ground, please let us know immediately. That would probably jump us and go straight to utilities to get that fixed. So some of the typical things that we do water services, sewer services. Some of the billing items are water services, sewer services, transportation user fee, vector control fee, and voluntary park improvement fee. So your water service, obviously, you have a base rate on that. Typically, if it's residential, it's going to be $14. The bigger the meter, the higher the base rate. Most residential is $14, and then for every 1,000 gallons you use a month, it's $2.95. So that's what makes up your water portion of your bill.
Your base rate goes up because the bigger meter you have, we have to have a system on the back end of that can supply the additional water that meter can take. So that might mean an upsize in the main because 1.5 inch meter per house can take a whole lot more water than a 3/4 inch meter, and is it fourfold from a 3/4 to 1.5 inch? So it's like only a 1/2 inch, not even twice big, but 4 times the amount of water can flow through it. So if every house on that block has an 1.5 inch meter versus a 3/4 inch meter, we now the amount of water that they can pull 4 times more for every single house, which means the main has to be sized to take that. So that's the rationale behind the tiered meter system. So the more water you can take, we charge you a little more for that, and then that way, like if you're on I should have printed that out, but like about 88% of the city's meters are 3/4 inch.
Right.
So the vast majority are 3/4 inch meters. So they're paying the lowest amount. When we go up, we try not to hit that base fee as much because those are your fixed income seniors and your things like that. Mm-hmm. So that is the cheapest rate. And if you use under 1,000 gallons per month, you don't get a usage fee. You just get the $14 base. But if you don't use 1,000 gallons one month, you likely will the next month. So it'll roll over, and you'll get the extra $3.05.
So then we have your sewer service. It also has a base rate of $22.25, and then after that, your sewer is based off of. We take January, February, and March because those are typically the lowest usage of water per year. You're not typically watering your yard, filling a pool, or washing, or filling up a pool or anything. So we take those 3 months, we average them, and it's $3.05 per 1,000 gallons on those after we average it. So you take the base rate and then however much you used in the averages for those months, and that's going to be your sewer bill. It's set in like that for the next 12 months. So that is the reason why we do that, is because that's, like I said, when you use the least amount of water. We don't want to charge you sewer on when you're outside washing the car.
We don't meter sewer. There's no meter to put on a sewer line to know exactly how much you're flowing through there because it's not all liquid.
Right. We don't want to gunk anything up.
And your sewer is also a little more than your water because sewer, it's like our residential water price is somewhat offset by the heavy industrial use. Mm-hmm. The industries are not using the sewer system. So when we get to those different departments, you'll see the drastic difference in what goes out versus what is actually treated. So the actual residential and commercial users pay for a higher portion of the sewer system. And so that's why you've got that $14 base rate for the water. The industry also chips into some of that maintenance, but you pay a higher on the sewer. And when we talk about how a sewer system works, you're going to see that there's just a lot more cost involved in the whole sewer system versus the water system. Now, the one difference to that is that commercial businesses do pay per water usage. They don't have an average because most businesses don't have a yard, right? So most businesses, if they're using the water, they're using the sewer. So like a restaurant, for every gallon of water they use, that water's got to go somewhere. They're not hauling it out in buckets and throwing it, down the street. It's hitting the sewer. So that's the rationale for that. If you're a business that has a really big grassy yard, like Happy State Bank, we can make you pay a tap fee for a second meter, and then that water meter doesn't have sewer assigned to it.
And that will only
some residents do that as well. They'll pay for a second tap so they can have a separate tap for their sprinkler system in their house. That way you do get a little more accurate reading. It also is very beneficial if you have a leak in your sprinkler system because you can just go turn off that meter. Actually, all the new homes on Yucca Estate, the new street on Camelot, we're putting in double meters just for that. Because it's easier on our guys if something happens and on the homeowners. So now the tap fee, if you want it done on your own, it is expensive. It's because that's where we recoup the cost of the meter. So I think it's $800 right now for a 3/4 inch tap.
1,000. It's $1,000 for a 3/4 inch.
But we've got to dig up the street. They put a tapping sleeve over it. I mean, it's a big deal.
That's what I try to explain to people is I believe it actually costs us a little bit more, correct, Chris, to actually put in that tap than we charge you. So even though it's $1,000, it probably cost us around $1,200 to $1,500 to put it in.
If we timed it out and took all the man hours and the equipment use and all of that. But normally those get put in with the developer, and the developer bears the cost when he's putting in the new line. And so when we see tap fees or when somebody wants that extra sprinkler system, and I mean, if you've got a big, let's just say Happy State Bank didn't do that, they've got all that fescue grass out there and boy, they like to water it. And I don't mind that because, it looks really nice when you come into town right there by Walmart. With as much water as they use, if they were paying sewer for every gallon, it wouldn't take long for them to pay for that. There's probably a $1,600 tap fee with the bigger meter, but it wouldn't take long for them to pay for that. So there is a part where it is cost effective. On a normal house, probably not. But most people with a 3/4 inch meter, you probably don't have an in-ground sprinkler system, so you're probably hand watering or using your little my grandpa had the little tractor. There's a little kid we used to like. Those use a lot less water all at once than a sprinkler system.
Your transportation user fee on your bill, it says tough. A lot of people call in wondering what that is. So that is for.
We talked about that a little bit.
Okay.
In our fund balance. Or in our fund overview, remember we have that's the street assessment fee. We will talk a whole lot about that when we get to the public works section. But that's your user fee for the transportation system. It's based on your use. The thought behind that is so when we added that fee, we reduced the property taxes. So we don't support street maintenance with property taxes anymore. We support it with this fee. And so it's based on your benefit or your use of the system. So a resident pays a flat fee. Businesses pay a fee based on their trip generation factor that's established by the Institute of Transportation Engineers. So like Walmart, they get more benefit from the system and they also cause more damage to the system because how many cars go in and out of Walmart. So Walmart's tough fee is $600 a month. So they pay $600 a month. Ace is one of the bigger ones. United's one of the bigger ones. A doctor's office, it's based on square footage, how much traffic they do. Is a lot less because you don't have a lot of traffic. And so there's this big chart and we set it. And so I said, we'll go over that, but that's when we were looking to get more money, but be fair about where to get it from. So now the basic resident pays $8, Walmart pays $600. I mean, and because of that, we have road maintenance gone from $100,000 a year to about $500,000 a year. So that's why you're seeing a lot more of that. But that is what the tough is. We'll talk about vector control more too when we get to public works. Vector control is mosquito control. That pays for more than just spraying. So like the truck that drives around with the mister is not the only way we handle vectors. We'll probably put it out now that it's been raining. I haven't put it out because it's been so dry. but we do have larvicide tablets that we give out at the utility billing counter. So any Borger resident with a utility bill can come and ask for larvicide tablets. They're pet and animal safe. You just throw them, like if you got standing water, you throw them in there to kill the larvae. Actually, that is 12 times more effective than aerial spraying. Aerial spraying, it has to be, you have to do it at dawn or dusk, which is when they're most active, and you have to do it when the wind is blowing less than 8 miles an hour. So how many days of the year at dawn or dusk do you think the wind is blowing less than 8 miles an hour?
So that side of town spray it so it dusts the whole place.
Right.
Well, the problem is it gets diluted.
Well, this side's just going to have to tough it out for a minute. We ran home.
Yeah, well, and
see it growing up.
yeah, and also kind of just keep in mind too that aerial misting, it only kills the mosquitoes that are active in the air at that time. It does nothing for the larvae that haven't hatched yet. It doesn't do anything for ones that aren't actively flying when the thing goes around. So I know we get a lot of pushback. Well, by God, I haven't seen that truck in forever. That truck doesn't do quite as much as you think it does. I mean, it definitely does something, and we do spray it. But the larvicide tablets keep getting standing water. Keeping standing water out of your, emptying out the, disposing of tires that are stacked in the alley, that hold water, things like that, have a much bigger impact on the mosquito control. And so our guys will even go out and throw larvicide tablets into areas they know that have standing water. And so we do a lot of treatment like that. So just because you don't see the truck spraying, that fee pays for a lot more than just the aerial spraying. And like I said, you can come up here and get larvicide tablets. And I'm kind of taking over a little bit on this because she just bills this stuff. Sometimes she doesn't know all the details of what the fees pay for because she's not in the finance department. Of course, they get some of those questions now. The voluntary park improvement fee, and so sometimes you see, is it park? I think it just says park on your bill.
Yes.
That goes into our park special projects funds. That money is only used for the improvement and benefit of the city's parks. So right now that generates about $30,000 a year in dedicated revenue. It's not a whole lot. That used to generate $48,000 in revenue a year. 20 years when I was on the council 20 years ago, we got $48,000 to $52,000 a year, and 20 years ago, a good set of play equipment was $10,000. So you could replace 2 parks a year with the amount of money. Now, between inflation and the fact that our population is going down and that fee hasn't changed, I can't even buy one play equipment a year with that fee. So it is voluntary,
Right.
and not everybody. It's technically. Do you even ask when you start a new account, or do you just?
If it's already on there from one person to the next, usually we'll ask. We do not typically ask whenever they call to turn on the system.
It's generally defaulted on, and then if somebody calls and asks, normally when somebody wants it off, because most people, because remember, we talked about this, 28 parks in the city of Borger, and we talked about, we'll get through this. We've got pretty much the same road miles of street. We've got the same number of parks. We've got the same amount of sewer lines, same number of manholes as we had when we were 25,000 people. Than now we are with 12,500 people. Well, in 1960, the population of Borger was topped out, I think, at about 22,000. But that did not include Phillip. So you had another 9,000 people in the actual city of Phillip. So you had about 30,000 people that really were Borger. And it was probably more than that because Buena Vista wasn't annexed until 1979. So that 20,000, 22,000 people of population in 1960 was pretty much what as Borger proper, not Buena Vista and not Phillips. So, I mean, you can argue that there were probably 35 or 40,000 people in the whole Metal Arc and all of that. Of course, a lot of that, Buena Vista wasn't near as big back then. It was mainly camp. So, I mean, there wasn't just a ton of people, but so the population keeps going down, but yet the amount of infrastructure we have that people expect us to maintain is not changing. So we've talked about maybe having the council change that to where you can select how much you want to, donate to the parks, and maybe where at least allow, if somebody wanted to donate more, they could donate more. If they didn't want to donate more, but that is one of the nice things because it is dedicated to the parks fund. So it only goes into park improvements.
And it's a
$1.
dollar amount.
Okay.
I was gonna say it's only a $12 a year total. So if you wanted to put it on, you just tell us and we can add it on and it'll be on your next bill. So let's see, right over here. So these are all the different ways.
I'm gonna go back one more just real quick because I did want to
Did
point
I?
out that's the leak notices mailed or leak notices made.
Thank you. Sorry, I can't hardly see that.
I changed her stuff up a little bit so we can have one PowerPoint instead of us going through
Right.
several PowerPoints. So that's my fault.
So usually make, so just in the month of April, we made, let's
So
see,
far this year.
So far this year, 3,621 leak notices. That does include automatic ones through our system. Remember, whenever it sends you an email, a text, a phone call, something like that, it is just counting how much water you've used. So if you know you filled up a pool this summer, then watch it a couple days, see if it pops up again. But if you know you haven't done anything different, then definitely start looking. Call us. We'll send Becky out. She's great at getting through those meters and seeing what's going on, seeing if there's anything, if it's your side, our side. Of course, if you get on there and see it's the city side leak, we come fix that.
And you can go to the
But
next slide now if you want. But I just wanted
okay,
you to see that because it ties into that. But so those
right,
girls have had the systems, or our girls have made phone calls or over
right,
3,200 notices of people having potential leaks already this year. So
right.
we are proactive in that. The new meters that we have, the AMR meters, they read. The system uploads those readings every 14 minutes, and so the system can analyze continuous use.
So
And
oh, sorry.
and so that's what it looks for. If so, like in a 24-hour period, if every reading showed use, that's unusual because people don't normally use water every
Continues for
14 minutes
24
for 24
hours.
hours straight. They can pull it
I
up on
can
their
pull it up
computer.
on my computer right now. Now it does take, sometimes it takes a little bit to update. So like if we were wondering, hey, do you have one specifically with this toilet and you have another one? We'll tell you, turn the valve off, call us back tomorrow morning, look at what time it was, then we'll look at the deal and say, yeah, that stopped at that time after you turn that valve off. That's
It only
it. We'll
uploads
help you once every 24 hours.
but it reads every 14 minutes.
Right. So it updates on our end every 24 hours.
So those were a good upgrade, I guess.
I think so. Well, and keep in mind,
They're
and like
amazing.
when they first went in,
Right, and we're able to help you more in the office with those. So instead of just counting on the tech to go out, we can help look at stuff. We can print stuff off and show you what we're looking at. It is so much more helpful and quicker for us and the customer.
the
It's been
problem that we
awesome.
kind of had originally with that, and you're seeing some of that in Amarillo right now, because of course they're getting it doubly bad right now because they're switching meters and they switched utility billing software.
Yeah, I've read it on Facebook.
Well, but the newer meters use a different technology to meter the flow. So they use an ultrasonic metering device. They don't miss anything. I mean, it's that so precise. I mean, it doesn't miss an ounce. Our old meters, they're mechanical, and over time they get out of calibration. And in fact, they used to have a guy that his job was to recalibrate meters. I don't remember exactly how often they pulled them, but you're supposed to recalibrate them like every 5 or 10 years or something like that. And so a lot of times, if you're shorthanded, that's the first job that goes out the door that gets because the leak's more important. And so when the new meter went in, a lot of people's water bill went up because they had leaks that weren't, because like a slow leak might not have been enough to actually turn the mechanical wheel. So some water can get by that, or it doesn't turn it fast enough to the calibrated speed. So you actually had a leak and you didn't know about it. So when we first switched into those new meters, people were calling because, oh my God, your meter's defective. You're overcharging me. And they had a leak. And I was like, I don't have a leak, but people forget, there's, how many feet of pipe from the meter to your house that if you have a leak, you may or may not see it.
Well, and I know a lot of times the reason why I use the toilet as a reference is because they'll call, your toilet can run up to like 98 gallons an hour. If it's just sitting there and you're listening to it run, it can go up to 98 gallons an hour. And people don't realize it can use that much water, and you don't have a puddle, you don't have anywhere you're seeing it because it's going right down into the sewer. So that's a big one we get. They're like, no, I don't. People call and they look at their stuff and then they realize one's going on and off. Well, if it's going on and off every hour for 5 gallons, 10, 20 gallons, that adds up really quickly.
And
it's
if your
it's a
grass is all
cost-efficient
dead except
fix.
one small little section, might be a clue.
Yeah, the one giant green spot. One thing I do want y'all to understand and know is that number right there, that does not include, that is automated leak notices, text message, phone call, stuff like that. That does not include the actual phone calls that we get on and we go, hey, something doesn't look right here. We have two systems, WaterSmart and Neptune, and we go through each one of them daily. Won't lie to you, sometimes it's every other day, but we try to go through those every day, and we will pick up the phone and call people. So that does not include what the girls are in there and myself actually picking up the phone and making a phone call to people. So you're looking at roughly, I would say, tack on another 500 a month of actual the ladies picking up the phone, calling the people, looking at it, breaking it down on the, on our system to see what's going on, and working with the customer to try to figure out.
Because we run
what's going on.
high usage alerts too.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll flag something that's way out of historical use for an account.
Right.
We also run zero consumption
Mhm.
reports. So like if you had zero consumption, that can be a dead meter. And that was the other thing when we replaced all these meters, we had probably, I don't know, 20 or 30 dead meters, I think, that ended up
So you weren't getting paid.
they weren't getting any consumption. They were getting charged the base rate, but they weren't getting
Yes.
any consumption. So now their new meter came in, and now they're getting bill consumption. They're like, my bill went way up, and they get all upset. Well, guess what? You haven't been charged consumption for 3 years, so we're not going to go back and try to, back bill you, but you are going to have to start paying your consumption now. Just consider yourself lucky.
Mhm.
Merry Christmas, pay your bill.
But
Yeah.
and there are some meters, and we do a lot of meter swaps just because people think their meter's bad, and it's
It's not.
probably less than 2% of the time is it the meter bad. It's
Mhm.
they've got a leak, and there like I said, there and nobody, and me included, I don't want to think the leak is in the stupid service line from the meter into the house under the yard somewhere. I mean, that's the last place I'm hoping the leak is.
Yeah.
But there are people that I know I laid that service line myself. I know that it ain't leaking.
Favorite's 1985.
And
It
so, I
might be
mean,
leaking now.
we that is kind of one of the nicer things about being a smaller city. I mean, we will take the time to switch a meter just to give
Yeah.
you another billing cycle and show a point. I mean, and we have, like I said, we have found sometimes it is a bad meter, but that's
Very rarely.
that's been very
Mhm.
very rare.
Most time we get the new one in there and it's still spinning, and
You still have a
No.
leak. Well, by God, I've checked everything. Well,
but we do try to really get in there and help people. If y'all ever have a question about a leak, feel free to call up there. We'll look at all of our stuff. If that doesn't help, we'll send the tech out. I mean, we try to jump through hoops the best we can
and
to
we're
help
not like
anybody.
Amarillo.
Cause y'all
We
called
called
me,
you. Yes,
and
I
the
remembered
house
that.
froze, it had, we didn't know the heater quit working, and it
Mhm.
froze, and it was
It was a
flooded the whole house.
Well, and especially like I said, since we're not a big city too, like we don't track hold times, we don't track resolution times on the phone calls. Big city call centers and stuff like that, they want you to resolve a problem as quick as possible. And so a lot of times their employees are rated or judged on their dwell time and their resolution time and their hold times. We're not going to do that, but keep in mind that there might only be 2 girls in there, so I mean,
Mhm.
if and we've got a call queue now, so if they're busy, the system will pick up and say, all of our agents are currently busy. Hanging up and calling back immediately is not going to change the fact that the agents are still busy. If if you wait on the line and stay in the queue, the minute one of them hangs up, it'll ring right through. So if you're getting the call queue, chill.
And if like one of us is at the drive up or in the front and the other one's vice versa and somebody else is on the phone, it's gonna put you in the queue. But it rings, say it goes to Melissa's phone. It's gonna ring 3 times. If she doesn't answer in that 3 times, it's gonna bounce. Huh?
It goes to her phone.
Yeah, it'll bounce to the next person's phone. But it goes to the last person who past the last person who answered a call.
It's fair.
So,
it fairly
It
distributes.
fairly
the calls.
distributes the calls. So if I answer a call, it's going to go somebody else the next time. And if they have, then I'll get it. WaterSmart, got it. He's changed these up on me, sorry. So WaterSmart is a system we use. That's that first little graph up there, where you can get an account. You just use your bill account number and make your own personalized account. And from there, you can see how you're using water, when you're using water on each day, and so forth. It kind of helps you be able to keep up with what water you have too. And it does kind of pull it on to what it thinks it's going to. So all the green there, that is a sprinkler system. So it thinks you're watering. And then the blue is just regular usage. You can see where some days there's hardly any. Other days there's quite a bit. Just depends, is that person in town, or are they using
And when
water?
you set up when you set up the account, it has made some basic assumptions based on satellite imagery. But if you update that, it's more accurate. How many people are living in the house? Do you have any kids in the house? Do you have any pets? Do you have an in-ground sprinkler system or not? And as if you answer all those questions, it gets honed in pretty good, and that makes the leak alerts more accurate. And it makes your usage more accurate. You can then click on each day and see your hourly use, just like this lags a little more than the back end system
Right.
they use up here. So we up here can see that your usage quicker than you can on WaterSmart, but you can see it all on WaterSmart yourself if you want to get in there and see it.
You can also customize your alerts. So, like for the winter, for example, I think I set my alerts at 500 gallons a day. If I use 500 gallons a day during the winter, something's probably wrong.
If you've got a really small leak and you've got a leak and and it's so small it's not worth the money to fix it.
Right.
You can tell it that, and then you won't get alerts every single day and all those text messages. Because there are sometimes it's a very small leak, and I would love you to fix all your leaks because we don't want to waste water. But I get that if it's only leaking
half a gallon or less.
1,000 gallons a month, that's an extra $3. It's probably cheaper to pay the extra $3 to the city than it would be to pay someone to dig up the yard to find that little leak. But I will tell you, leaks don't stay little forever.
That's what we warn people when they call in. Yes, I understand you don't have the money to fix it right now. Just keep in mind it is there, because eventually what is there will get bigger, which means so will how much it costs.
But keep in mind when we
So-
talk about, in the next slide, she's going to go over some of our policies and like payment plans and leak adjustments and stuff like that. We are a lot less, we're not flexible, but we are not as flexible on leak adjustments as we were before, because you have ways to find your leak sooner. Before we went to new meters, most of the time, if you didn't see it, you didn't know. We read the meter once a month, so you didn't know till you got the bill, and then, oh my God, it's 30,000 gallons. Because it happened on day 2 of the next billing cycle, and if you didn't see it, you didn't have. But now, we're proactively making calls. The system is alerting you. We're checking it, and so with this system, if you've got set up within 24 hours of the leak starting, you will get a notice, and sometimes quicker than that.
Well, I had a lady, she's a single woman, didn't use a lot of water. Every time she's an elderly lady, every time she'd do her laundry on Sundays, it'd send her a leak alert. And it was because it was just abnormal from her normal consumption. So I had to get in there and kind of help her adjust it. We figured it out, and then it stopped doing it. The next time it went off, it was because she had a leak. So there's always some adjustments in there you can do, or that we can try to help you do on the back end to set that up so it doesn't, set it off
Well,
when you use
and-
your washing machine.
And keep in mind too, if you do have a leak, I know that once a leak, I shouldn't have to pay for it, but guess what? The city had to pay to produce it. So there's still a cost to us producing and treating that water, whether it's a leak or not. So if I don't make anybody else pay for it, then those get factored into everybody's rate, because we have to cover that cost anyway. So is it fair for everybody else to pay 20% more in their water rates to compensate for the few people that don't want to fix their leaks? And so, there again, back to that collective good. Because we used electricity to pump it out of the ground, we, had to build the tank that held it. We had to buy the chlorinator and the chlorine to chlorinate it, and all that stuff that you're going to see in a few more slides.
Okay, so on that bottom chart there, so just real quickly, so that is how many utility bills we mail out. So roughly just a rundown, we are really promoting email billing, and this will kind of explain why. So as you can see, in April of 2026, we mailed out 4,783 bills. That is roughly $3,061 for 1 month of bills. If you kind of
Postage.
in postage, that's not your envelopes, that's not your paper, that's just in postage. That is roughly almost $37,000 a year. So we're really pushing that so we can use it in other stuff, infrastructure, things like that. Even lower,
This next
not have to
fiscal
raise
year,
the
I
cost
think
of
we're
water.
we're probably going to do a bill credit for those that have email bills turned on. We'll give you $1 credit
Mm-hmm.
and kind of try to tie into that. I know some people got upset when we did away with the return envelopes.
Well, that's what I was gonna ask you. 'Cause
We-
that to me is silly.
We have them in the office, and you can come get
I
them,
was
but
gonna
they
ask how many people actually return those.
One, we
Not
did the count
very
before I
many.
did away with that. So we were mailing out 5,200 return envelopes every month, and on average, we're getting 150 back.
Mhm.
And so by by not adding return envelopes, we saved $12,000 a year.
The few people.
And you can still come up here and get
Yes.
them.
We have some of the, elderly people and stuff that can't get out of their homes very well, things like that. They'll usually send a family member up here once a year. We bundle them in 12, and we just put them through the drive-thru and send them on their way. Those they usually do use. But in comparison, we do not have near the amount if they have to come up here and get them as whenever
Yeah, that was
they're
one of the
putting
things
or
I
mailing
noticed
them
when I got
out.
over to City Hall, and
Mhm.
that was and it made because the inserting the inserter machine,
Mhm.
it can be temperamental enough, which is paper. When you had that return envelope in there too, that made it took
Oh.
twice as long to stuff everything because you were adding that, and then less than 10%. It was like 4% of people were using it, but we were, nobody else ever returned them back to us, so we could reuse them and restuff them. They just got thrown away, and so that was. We got a little heat when we did that because we went to intelligent mail barcoding where we used to give let Packet Mail process all our stuff. We still on, but he mailed it. But he was just charging the going rate. We stopped using him because we went to automatic pre-sort, so our system pre-sorts them in the trays and all that stuff. And when we
Yep.
did that, the retail rate we were paying Packet Mail was, I think, 49 cents per envelope back then. When we first went to that, it reduced the automated pre-sorted like that went down to 33 cents.
So
So by doing that, we saved about another 20. So we did that at the same time we took out. So we said, hey, $12,000 a year in the return envelope, and we saved almost $30,000 a year in postage on the intelligent mail barcoding. So we're getting close to $50,000 in savings just by mailing them ourselves and taking out that envelope.
And that is, let's see, I added up, it was roughly $186 more last month than it was in January 2025, and that's just due to the price of stamps going up even with that. So we're asking people when they start, or if you want to do that,
Yeah, I think
trying
our
to really
pre-sorted rate
get-
now is it's like 55 cents.
it is
isn't
65.
The
It is
pre-
64.1.
On the water smart, when you go in, you log in, you can look at it.
Right.
Or you pull up, so you can can you go in and print it off of it, right? From there?
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
So is there an option I would want mine just all 12 months stuck on a bill. Is there something like that in it?
Oh, yeah, you just
Isn't that way-
select
can I
which
just
one
say
you
this is
want.
Here's my year worth on, a couple
of your usage or your bill history.
my bill.
Okay.
So
Just what I showed, what was basically billed and paid.
So that's on the payment system. Like if you because so we technically have two systems. We have the WaterSmart, and then there's like if you go to borgertx.gov/payments, the online payment portal. If you get that set up, it does have that tab where you can export like it more in spreadsheet view, where you just see the year's worth of details.
Not that I need the whole thing, but I really want
Just a breakdown.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The online
that's
payment
good.
portal has that.
Because in that way it saves up on
You can get
storage of my own record.
You can
Right.
get some of that in WaterSmart.
Yeah.
It's not as easy for that right now. We're trying to get them
Yeah,
to talk a little better, but
I have been working on that to get the two systems to talk to each other. I'm currently working with IT and another city that's local in the surrounding area to try to figure out how they set theirs up to try to get ours to work. So right now, if you get onto WaterSmart and you're having glitches, I am actively working to try to get that fixed with multiple
because
people.
your payments don't get updated to WaterSmart right now, just the bills.
Just
so you can get the bill history, but you don't see the payment history. Which, if you're paying 100% all the time, it would be the same. But there are a lot of people that don't
Right.
always pay 100% of their bills. So, but we're working on that so that you don't have to go between the two systems quite as much. If we get the data link like we want to, you should be able to do almost everything from the WaterSmart portal.
So right now, one other thing on here is bills paid online. So our goal is 26, last month 27% of people paid online. So we're kind of sitting right there, as you can see on that chart. We're staying within a few percentages of our goal. More people are paying online. They're also paying over the phone using our IVR
I think that's the
system,
next
text. Oh, yes, there we go. Payment portal. Okay, sorry. Okay, so you have your online portal. Like I said, we're staying pretty close. About 27% of people use it. We have our automated phone system and text to pay. So about 18% roughly of people in town use one of those two ways to pay. We do have the night drop box, let me be very clear, money order or checks only, no cash. It says it on the front in big red letters. We do that for your safety and ours. Just
And it's hard.
always
People say,
paper.
"Well, I put my payment in there.
Right.
What'd you? It was in an envelope. Well, what was the check number? Oh, it was cash.
Right.
Well, we didn't get it. Well, y'all must have stolen it. And how do you? I'm not saying that our employees are perfect, but we try to be really good about
Right.
that. And I mean, but cash, it's not traceable. So if you stick it in that night box, that's why it's got the warning. We probably may or may not be understanding of. We might waive the late fee if you say that, but we're not going to credit your bill because you put cash in the night drop box.
I will say that we have kind of changed that up a bit, and unless I'm not here, I'm the only one that opens that not drop box now. And I can guarantee if you put it in there, it will be in there. But
And that's why I
just
say that.
know-
Like I fully trust all of our employees, but I mean, nobody's perfect, and I mean, we've seen even in this community long-term employees at places that have done things that they shouldn't do, and so
Mhm.
I know that citizens are never going to say, well, how you can't trust them 100%,
Right. So then we have in person. Of course, you can come through the drive up. You can come inside. You usually come inside and pay. I know that. So
Check on y'all.
yeah, you have to come see what's going on in utility billing, right? And then of course, you've got again the phone payments. We do not take payments over the phone in office anymore. The reason why we stopped doing that is so you didn't have to give your credit card information out. We know, and we don't have it at our desk anymore. Used to, we could pick up the phone, type it in, but that's safer for you
and
to not just be
the
giving
processing
out.
rate for us is cheaper for that. So a
Right.
manually keyed entry has the highest processing rate because it's got the highest chance of fraud. So by switching you to the IVR, the computer system where there's nobody monitoring, to where you're not giving your credit card information to a person, we get a lower rate because the chance of fraud is less. And really, I know that some people get frustrated with that, but you should be thanking us for that because we're helping protect your private credit card information by not doing that.
Right.
I know that it might be a little more inconvenient to use, but they've got it on their phones. They will transfer it to you. They will make sure you've got your account number and everything that you need to use the automatic system. It can't be that hard if 18% of people are using it.
And I feel like that's low. I just feel like a lot more people use it than that.
Well, before we went to you had to use it. It was like 9%.
Mhm.
So I mean, you've added 7%, but
Mhm.
so that 7% was probably the people that would call up here and just want us to key it in.
Mhm.
But and that's with our cash handling procedures and all of that. I mean, we try to look at all of that to protect everybody. So I mean, I don't like, as much as I trust our employees and we try to hire right. I don't. It's a lot easier. Like I say, our people couldn't do it because we don't take credit cards over the phone. So
Right.
they couldn't write down your, because making that, you're giving them everything they need.
Mhm. It asked for everything
Go and
on that
defraud your
card,
credit
front and
card.
back, and the zip code. So
And there's, I think a lot of places now, most all the utilities are like that. They won't take it. They'll say, "Well, let me hold while I transfer you to our payment system." I mean, there are a lot of people that do that, and so that's why.
and that's for y'all's protection. We just want to keep everybody's information safe. And then of course we have draft. So if you want to use your account and routing number, y'all can come up here or call up here. We will put it in the system and then we'll pull it once a month with everybody in your area. So keep that in mind. If something happens with your draft and it comes back, we can't just run your draft again. You'll have to pay that month's payment and then we'll fix whatever's going on and you'll get it the next month. And usually that only happens if it's like the very first one. If you have like a check or something, that's the easiest way for us to make sure the routing number's right. If it's a local credit union or bank, it's already in our system, their routing number. So I like that way because it's real quick to tell us something went wrong. And then we can get a hold of you. Another way to do automatic payments is online. You can set using your card information. Again, one thing with the online is you more than welcome to use it, but all we can see is if you have one saved or not. The last four of the card and the expiration. And other than that, we can't see anything online to do with your card, and that is for your protection.
It's
So-
safe. So debit card or credit card, you can auto pay online,
Yes.
but if you want bank draft, you have to do that in person. I think most people would rather have it on their debit card or credit card. You can do that yourself, but they can also set that up in house. Because I know a lot of people, like the electric company requires bank draft. They won't do
Right.
credit card or debit card, so I know some people get frustrated with that. And we
Um,
kind of glazed over that earlier, but don't forget, we are not the electric company.
oh, yes.
We are not the gas company. We are not the cable TV or internet company.
And on your Sparklight bill, for some reason under it, the 2730918 number is ours, not Sparklight. We get those a lot. People will look at their bill and for some
What
reason
the statement
City of
says is
Borger.
because we are the regulating authority. So they have a
Right.
statewide franchise agreement. So in theory, we regulate them. So if you have a complaint, you're supposed to call us, which is why it's on the back of the bill, but it's only for regulatory purposes. And we can't even do anything with them. We have to go file with the state. We can do some things, but we don't. No, the cable TV, if cable TV we do, but if the internet we don't. And so that's why it's on your cable TV bill, because the city regulates them. The other thing I want to, real quick, with your gas bill, Texas Gas, when they do a rate, right now, if you call Texas Gas and complain about your rate, they say the Railroad Commission approves their rates. If you call the Railroad Commission, they say the city approves your rates. If you call the city, I'm going to say yes and no. We have jurisdictional authority over that, but we have denied their last 4 rate increases, and when we deny it, they appeal it to the Railroad Commission, and then the Railroad Commission has final say, and they do approve it. So the city does not have, the only time we have final say is if we say yes, and we have not said yes to any of their current rates. The gas company sets their rates, they file them with us, we deny it, it goes to the Railroad Commission, the Railroad Commission says, no, we think this is reasonable, we approve it. And right now, and I know because I know there have been, like, the gas rates have changed a lot, and they're significantly higher. They've increased the base rate and decreased the consumption rate. Right now, they're in the process of trying to consolidate statewide, which right now, Borger and Skellytown used to be in its own service area, which means our rates were set only based on our costs. Then 4 years ago, they combined us into what they call the West-North service area, which combined Borger and Skellytown with Weatherford service area, which is like Weatherford and Graham and Andrews and El Paso. And so now that was the West-North service area. Now they're trying to consolidate us into one statewide service area, which now also includes the Gulf Coast region and Austin. With the proposal that we have denied, that we are now joining El Paso and the other cities trying to fight with an appeal on the lawsuit, because it would shift $30 to $60 million of fixed cost to the West-North service area, which for the average homeowner would be $14 more a month. All because combining would spread out the fixed costs more, and we don't think that why are we having to pay for fixed costs to provide gas in Austin? And so I don't know if we're going to win that. So if you see that, I mean, we are fighting for that, and I know that sometimes when people get upset about their water bill, our rates in the last 5 years have gone up a total of about, I think, 6%. The total inflation in the last 6 years has been like 14, and we've gone up half of that. So we've gone up, but we try to be mindful of that. The lowest increase has been on those 3/4 inch meters, and if you compare us to what your gas bill's gone up and what your electric bill's gone up, we've gone up a lot less than everybody else.
Okay, so some of the assistant resources we have here in town in Hutchinson County, when people call in and they need help paying their water bill or they've gotten behind and for one reason, life has thrown some things at them and they need some help. Panhandle Community Services, they help a lot here in town. They're right down here off of Main and 10th, right on this side of 10th. Living Waters, they're right here on the other side of Main. Going towards 3rd, and then Salvation Army on 10th Street. A lot of the local churches will help. If you call around or if you know anybody who needs help,
If
a
they're a
lot of
member of a
churches,
church,
yeah,
especially if they're a member of a church.
There's a few churches that will help if you contact them. If you're not, but most of them, if you're a member of the church, they're more than willing to help you. Hutchinson County Crisis Center, HC3. They're really good. One of the things I like now is Adult Protective Services will help the elderly without starting an APS case. So without starting an actual case, if they just need help, one-time help, they will do that without opening a whole case on the individual. So I do love that. And they have done that for quite a few people. Let's see.
Payment plans.
Got it. So let's start at the top there. 1 leak adjustment per calendar year typically after repair. So if you have a leak of any kind and is on the customer side, you've gotten it fixed, may you do it yourself or you've paid somebody to do it, however you've gotten that done, we'll come out, we'll check, or if we can see it on our system that it's back down to zeros, then we have a specific calculation that we do for everybody across the board, and that's how we come up with how much we take off your bill. So
And keep in mind, like, if you're going to fix it, I mean, we will defer late fees if in things like that. If you're trying to wait, if it takes a little longer for you to get it fixed, but it does not benefit us or any of the other ratepayers to give you a leak adjustment and you not fix the leak.
right. So we usually just wait until it's fixed,
So if you're
and
not going
then
to
we'll
fix
go
it, we are
back.
not going to give you if you're continuing to let it leak and wasting our water and increasing our cost, we're not going to give you that leak adjustment. It's would be bad for every other ratepayer. So you might not like that, but that's why we make you get it fixed before we give you an adjustment.
One of the options that we do is I tell people if it's getting really close, you found out you have one and it's getting really close to the day the bill's due, I'll tell them, listen, we'll write it down, we'll put it on your account, we'll work with you, we won't do the late fee, and get that fixed, and then we'll do the adjustment, and then you can pay the bill. And even at that point, if it is large enough, we will set up a payment plan. That's another option we have. You pay 1/3 of it up front, and then you can pay the rest of it in 3 months. That will be paying your regular bill with that partial payment, but that kind of helps people get up, because if you get a $500, $600, $700 bill after the adjustment, most people don't just have that lying around to say, here, let
So
me
payment plans are to
take care of
catch you
that.
up, not to keep you in the hole, which is why we
Right.
require the payment in addition to the next full bill. Because if you're not able to pay the full bill, we're not helping you. It's it amazes me how many people keep trading cars with all this negative equity, and then they can't. Then after doing 5 cars with negative equities, 4 years later, you can't get out of it because it's upside down by so much. That's the same thing with the water.
Right.
We got ways to help you, but you gotta.
So you do have to pay 1/3 of it up front, and then we'll divide it up in 3 months. You'll pay your regular bill and then that portion. Also, we have arrangements and payment plans that do accrue late fees. So what those are is we usually try to send out phone notifications the day before we cut. That is to benefit you and us. I mean, the less people we have to go out and cut, the less people get cut. So we usually send out voice notifications. Now, those do not give you the option to select a button to make your payment on them. So if you hear those, hang up, call us. Don't hit the button to go on, but it will tell you you owe this much due today or before disconnection, and then we'll disconnect the next morning. If at that point hey, I don't get paid till Friday, or I don't get paid till next Wednesday, you can call up to the office or even go online, make a payment arrangement and say, hey, I can pay this bill on next Friday. And okay, well, let's put it in there. That's your payday. Let's put it in. Or I had a lot of stuff happen this week. Can I pay it Tuesday? Yes. And as long as you're keeping up with those arrangements, we will keep making them for you. Now, if you fail 3 in a 12-month period, that's from January to December, then we will stop making them, because what's happening is you'll just get farther and farther behind. It's not helping you anymore. So, but as long as you're making them, well, we have people that call, I get it cutting on Tuesday. I get paid Friday almost every month. They keep that every month. They pay it on Friday. So we do that, and we'll keep doing it to help out however we need to. Now, keep in mind that does not stop late fees. You still will accrue the late fee, but you will not get a disconnection fee because we won't be disconnecting.
And with all that, I mean, with anything we do, and I give the same speech on fines and citations and stuff too. If you got a problem, call and let us know.
Yes.
Just call early. The problem is most people wait till we shut off their water, and by then you've got the disconnection fee, and you've probably got another bit, because we don't cut until you've got another bill issued. So if you don't call us to do something until we've cut you off, you're already 2 months behind.
Right.
So it's not just 1 month. So if you got something that's up, call us before we cut you off. Make that arrangement before it turns into 2 months behind, and the late fee is $25. I mean, we have people that are constantly late that never call, and in the course of a year, that's $300 a year they're spending. And I mean, and it is crazy because there are people and businesses that I know have the money, so I don't know what the deal is, why they won't pay on time.
And like I said, making an arrangement doesn't just help you.
$25 to the water. Just take it as a, well, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So, and that, like I say, it not only helps you to make an arrangement, it helps our tech because every person that she has to disconnect, she has to turn around that day if they've paid and go reconnect them. So say you have 30 people, just for say 30 people pay. She's now been to 60 different or 60 properties that day, just turning on and off. That does not include her regular service orders, any leaks, anything like that. That is just for the cuts for that day.
And we've got good records. I mean,
Mhm.
if you call and you've never called and you're not a problem, I mean, we're going to
Oh,
work
yeah.
with you, and we'll waive we waive fees pretty easily on things like that. I mean, so I mean, we're going to work with you every way we can. If this is the 12th month you've called and we've given you a waiver 12 times and have failed to comply with that waiver 12 times, that's why that other policy exists.
Mhm.
Because you can't just keep doing it. But
Right.
we know things happen. But there again, remember, there is a cost. I mean, I can't give away water. There is a cost to us to do it. I can't tell Chris and say, hey, you need to lay off one of your distribution guys because we're not charging late fees anymore, and we're just going to waive everybody that doesn't pay, so we can't afford to pay that guy. So let's just let even more leak because now we can't pay the repair. I mean, that cost it's set. And we talked about on the different accounts. This is a proprietary fund because we do run this like a business. The government operates it, but this is not a government service. This is a business. And if we don't look at that, we're shifting that cost to all of the other ratepayers because it does we do a rate analysis every 5 years and it factors in all our costs. And so if that cost is going to get factored in to what your rate is. So everybody else is going to, if we're not a little stickler on that, everybody else is going to pay for it. And then all of y'all are going to be bitching about why my water rate went up. And when I tell you, well, these people thought it would be better if y'all's rates were higher because they didn't want to pay.
And we do, everybody gets one penalty reversal a year. So, we have some people that I went on vacation and forgot to pay it, and I came back and I have a $25 late fee. These people are rarely late.
Oh crap, my auto payment
we're
card
gonna-
expired and I forgot
Right.
to update the
We're going to
expiration date.
reverse that penalty. Everybody gets one penalty reversal per year on each account. So now once that's done, if you use it in January, that's it. Unless there is extenuating circumstances like a major leak, things like
I
that.
went to Germany and I was like, I didn't leave for my water. I had to call them.
Yeah.
I was in Germany.
Yeah.
Hey. Yeah.
But we got it taken care of, didn't we?
We did.
Tra-
I was
two
like, I'm sorry.
continents
I'll be back
away.
Thursday.
Continents away, and we still got it taken care of.
Well, we talk about we talk about responsive and diversity, treating everybody fair. That's what diversity is to me is making sure that everybody is treated the same way. So we have to have rules so that we can treat everybody the same way, because it's hard.
Okay. I think
Other
that's
billing
just about-
questions.
Did that explain the questions you had earlier? Oh, okay. All right. That sounds great. If y'all ever need anything, just have questions, something comes up, call up here, come up here. We'll dig into whatever we can find on your account, on both of our leak check accounts, and we'll see what's going on. Or if something doesn't look right on your bill, call me. We'll get to looking at it because I do all the bills. So if so, don't get upset. Just call me. We'll figure out what's going on before you do. So.
Well, and and you've heard that. I mean, as you start to interact with more city employees, as we've gone through more departments, you're hearing that from everybody. And I've said that before. I mean, the city employees want to help, but they need to know.
Right.
So many of the people that say we don't do anything never called to ask.
Right.
They just think we won't or don't know who. And there are some issues with knowing who to call, which we talked about that, why we've gone down to 12 numbers. But normally once we connect you with if you're connected with the right person, they're going to do what they can to help you.
Mhm.
And so that's the. And now you can spread that around and tell people if they've got a leak, well, you better go call them or go in there and talk to them.
Any other questions? Anything? No. Okay. I'm gonna hand this over to Chris then. Thank you.
He can stay in the back unless you want to come forward. You can come forward if you want, but thanks to the First Lady of Texas yesterday, we didn't have I didn't have as much. Of course, now Chris is Chris sits through a lot of my leadership Borger talks, so I mean, if you've been around me enough, I'm kind of like a broken record because I say the same things over and over. And so I know he's probably got my leadership Borger speech at the wastewater plant memorized by now because it's pretty much almost exactly the same every year. I learned a few little bit, but so we're going to talk about kind of going into water. We're going to start with water. So we do have quite a few sources of water. So we have three city well fields. That's the Northwest well field and the Stinnett well field and the West well field. This big fancy map you got up here is the Stinnett and the Northwest well field. So the red line is the Northwest well field line. The yellow line is the old Stinnett well line. The yellow line was put in the 60s, and then the red line we put in to supply Nutrien's Lone Star project when they did their billion-dollar investment between 2014 and 2016. And so that gives us a little bit of redundancy coming into the system. And then the West Wellfield's not on that map. It's the old Degussa water system which supplied their Carmerbach plant, so it's pretty small. It is a source, but it's not a big source. But then we're also a member of CRMWA, and we get water from CRMWA. We get water from CRMWA in two ways. We get Lake Meredith water. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And then we get water from their John C. Williams well field, which is in Roberts County. So we are a member of CRMWA. CRMWA is made up of 11 member cities. So there's that little map is the CRMWA aqueduct and all the CRMWA pipes. That's what Lake Meredith was created for. Can't remember if we talked about it in this group yet or not. Lake Meredith is actually named after AA Meredith, which was the Borger city manager, who was the champion of Lake Meredith and CRMWA. He actually retired from Borger to go be the first director of CRMWA. Unfortunately, he actually died about a year before the dam was built, so he never got to see it fully come to fruition. But after it was built and started filling, the CRMWA board named it after him for all the work that he did. So when I talk about water and regional cooperation, Borger's got a pretty long history of leading in the region, and we like to do that as much as we can. So that is CRMWA's Amarillo, Brownfield, Borger, Lamesa, Levelland, Lubbock, Pampa, Plainview, Slayton, Tahoka, and O'Donnell. Back in the 50s, they went to every city in the Panhandle and asked them to be a member. And all of these cities, these are the only ones that wanted to commit to CRMWA. Now, some 60 years later, do you know how many of those cities wish they had been a part of CRMWA? Every day, Joe Price, the city manager of Canyon, goes, I think I'm going to see if they'll let me into CRMWA. I'm like, good luck. Because we'd have to agree to it. We'd have to figure out what their prorated share of all the investment that we've made over the years would be. There'd be a big upfront cost. And so, luckily, because of that, we've got that source. And that's pretty good for us. Our allocation this year is with Lake Meredith water that we can't use very much of. We'll talk about that in a minute. A little over 4 million gallons a day we get from CRMWA. Our allocation for groundwater is little over 3.6 or 3. Yeah. So there is 125 miles of transmission line, in that main aqueduct, and then you see it branch off there. And so we're lucky because we're at the north side of that. Lubbock, Lubbock city manager is Jared Atkinson. He was in Amarillo for a little while. I like Jared pretty well. He likes to say right now is the closest water, the city of Lubbock, their closest water source is 60 miles away. Their closest. That, I like using that to show how much better we've got it, because we're all within 20 miles or less. Cities can pay big bucks for that. And of course, what we pay for CRMWA is all portioned out by our percentage. Borger has a little over 4% participation in CRMWA, so we're 4% of their cost, 4% of their water. Amarillo and Lubbock, of course, are the largest. Amarillo's the largest, I think, at like 36%, 38%, and Lubbock's right behind them at like 30 or something like that. Those aren't my cities, so I don't remember those quite as much. We are a little unique because of our position. So we get water two ways from CRMWA. We get a lake line straight from the lake, which is lake water only, and then we get Roberts County well water from the Roberts County line. Of course, originally there was no well water. Originally, CRMWA was only lake water. That's how they started, and that's all they did. So everybody got the same water. When the John C. Williams well field was put in, it runs from Roberts County to the North Amarillo Regulating Reservoir. No, it's that just south of town It goes, the CRMWA 2 will go to the North Regulating Reservoir, but so they blend. CRMWA blends everybody's water at the point where those two pipelines cross. They are just south of Borger, right? So every other CRMWA city gets a blend of lake water and well water. Because of where we're at, we have a separate lake line, so we get water sourced in 2 separate pipelines that we can dictate how we use. And so because of that, we haven't had lake water in our potable water system since, like, I always forget this, like 2011 or early 2010. So, well, that's my guess, which is why it doesn't have an exact date, because every year that's the one date for what I mean. I can remember lots of things. For some reason, that one always stumbles me for some reason, because I don't think it should be that long ago. And then, like, I sit there and I think about it, it's like that's been like almost 20 years ago now. And so I'm like, but so your potable water at the house has been 100% well water since at least 2010.
Meredith was drying up, it really didn't affect us.
Well, and that's
It would a little bit probably. But
well, and even the other, there were 2 years where CRMWA did not supply any lake water to any of its member cities. And so the John C. Williams well field was originally designed to be able to compensate for that. And so there were 2 years where no lake water is used. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the other problems with that. But because of that, like, so we can sell at the time, Nutrien was buying the lake water untreated for their cooling tower because they could get it cheaper. Now the salinity, which we're going to talk about in a minute, has gotten so high up there, it's calcifying their systems, and so they don't even want the lake water. So now we don't really have a use for our lake water, and so because our treatment plant hasn't been used since 2010, and really half the reason we did away with that anyway is because it was starting to have some issues and needing significant maintenance. But we supply about 12 million gallons a year of water. Our domestic use is only about 2 million gallons a day, depending on the season. So the amount of money that we would spend on lake water, surface water treatment improvements for 10% of our water just didn't make sense. We were lucky enough we had the groundwater capacity to compensate with the groundwater versus having to do that. Now, it's still nice to have that because we've got about a million gallons a day of lake water allocation we could use. So, like, when we talk about new businesses coming in, normally I throw out, what are your water quality issues? There could be a chance for us to partner on some sort of like treatment, because treating lake water for plant use would be a lot cheaper than treating lake water for potable use. So there could be good partnerships in that. So it's still good to have. This is the history of inflow into the lake. On the left, on the right is the watershed. So the blue areas are the part of the panhandle where the water ends up in Lake Meredith. So you can see, really, we don't want Amarillo to get rain. We don't really even want ourselves to get rain if we want the lake to go up. We want, like, Dalhart and, New Mexico. The little blue shaded areas all up in there. So north of Amarillo's good. So, like, the rain the last couple days has been right in the smack dab middle of the watershed. The problem is when it's been so dry, that first round gets absorbed in the ground and none of it makes it into the watershed. But so you can see that what this shows is that the average inflow into the lake between 1965 and 1999 to 2000 was 130,000 acre feet. So since 2000, in the last 25 years, our average inflow has been about 60,000 acre feet. So our average inflow has halved from what it was in the early days of the lake. Now, I will say that some of that is, there was a good period of time where Ute was having to release water regularly. That is some of it, but that's not all of it. Most of that water was still just following in the watershed. So luckily, in the late 90s, that's when they started planning the John C. Williams well field. And then, of course, you can see the 14-year record, the drought of record. So you can see we've at least gotten past that a little bit. So it's the big question is going to be is, how soon does the next drought come back, or will that average be able to trick up? But we're definitely not anywhere near where we were. So that's not going to change anytime soon. Now, the problem that's created, so the left chart is the lake elevation. So you can see where it got down to 26.14 feet was the record feet. So that's the history of the lake over the history of the lake, the elevation. So the next chart is the chloride concentration, the salt content in the lake. So what happens is when water evaporates, it leaves all the minerals behind, right? The water's gone, but the minerals aren't. The only way to get minerals out of the water is to pump it and use it. Because we don't, most like big dams like Hoover Dam, that are used for hydropower, they're constantly running water through it, so the chlorides and the minerals never build up. This is a static pond. So when it got down to 26 feet, you can see the chlorides got over 1,900 parts per million in the lake. And then you can see that we're now back up to, 80 feet. The last time we were at 80 feet, in 2000, the chloride level was like 389. And so, but now it's 671 parts per million at the same level, at the same depth. So we've doubled the chlorides from that drought evaporation pull down. Drinking water standards are 300 parts per million. So you can't have more than 300 parts per million. So that's why CRMWA blends it. So the salt in the lake depends on how much lake water you can use. The saltier it is, you've got to compensate by adding more groundwater. And so right now, they're blending it like 10 to 1. So, and then again, the only way to get it out is to pull more of it out, but you can't pull more of it out because you can't blend it enough to get it down to the drinking water standards. And I pull that up because, we get a lot of people, they bitch about, keep in mind, I know that Lake Meredith is a good recreation area, and I mean, it's fun to have a nice lake that you can use with, but that's not what it was constructed for. That's a secondary use. And even if we, so our inflow is 60,000 acre feet a year. That lake evaporates on average between 50 and 70,000 acre feet a year. Just an evaporation, whether we take anything out of it or not. So in the last 25 years, the inflow has not been enough to compensate for evaporation, let alone what we take out of it. So it's not doing anybody any good, us not taking out of it. I know that people want to keep it. Now, because keep in mind, if the chlorides keep going up, eventually it turns into a saltwater lake and you have no fish. And so a good chunk of that recreation will go away if it gets too salty. So a lot of that is kind of driving some of what they're changing. So this graph, the left graph shows you the makeup of the city's water supplies. So this is all cities combined in the CRMWA area. So the blue is city supply. So you can see before the lake came online, cities were supplying all their water. Then the lake came online and CRMWA started supplying lake water, which is covering a pretty good chunk of all the city supplies. But the cities were still having to compensate some, right? Then you can see where the CRMWA wells came on, which is kind of that light gray. And you can see those 2 years where there was no lake water supplied. So you can see that the lake water has, amount of lake water that's being supplied has continued to go down in reverse to that. Now this other chart is CRMWA's capacity. So the black line is what they can supply with no lake water. The red line is their maximum daily supply capacity with lake and Roberts County. So the marks is how much water they've actually supplied. So you can see if the lake goes, like the number of days above the red line aren't that many. And on those days, that's why they've got reservoirs and stuff that they pull from is how you get more than what your technical maximum is. So I mean, it is potential capable, but you can't extend that because you're pulling down your storage. So to make up that, you're pulling down your storage. So you can't be above that red line very long. But you can see we don't have many days above that red line right now, right? But when the lake goes away, how many days do we have above that black line? And so without the lake, CRMWA doesn't have enough water to supply its member cities based on what we're taking right now most of the time. And so that's why they've started talking about CRMWA 2. So CRMWA 2 is an expansion of the Roberts County well field, which would build a new pipeline, which would double the daily capacity of CRMWA's well water supplies. It would connect the Roberts County line to the North Amarillo Regulating Reservoir. That's y'all ever go all the way into Amarillo on 136, like you don't get off at the loop and you keep going? And that big thing that's bermed right there by that little stoplight at like Northwest 3rd, 23rd, or 24th. That big berm, that's their regulating reservoir, and it's on their daily report. But that's holds 20 million gallons or something like that. It's a big reservoir, so it would connect there. The good thing about this too is that gray pipeline. Remember, that's the original aqueduct. So if you ever go out to Lake Meredith, you see that big concrete tube that's right there off the side of the road. That's a sample of what that aqueduct is made out of. That aqueduct's been in the ground since 1962 or 4 or something like that. And so for the most part, it's okay. But from Lake Meredith to that North Amarillo regulating reservoir, it's under pressure. They pump it because it's uphill. And so that causes more damage to the pipe. So that section of CRMWA's pipeline is most susceptible to failure. Right now, if that pipeline, if something happens in that section of pipeline, the only people that keep getting water is Borger and Pampa. Right here, anything south of that, and nobody but Borger and Pampa get water. North of that, Borger and Pampa still get well water, but no lake water. So that's a big deal for the other CRMWA member cities having some redundancy. So CRMWA 2 would be able to bypass that most stressed, oldest part of pipe. And so,
Is that what they've been putting in out there?
no, what you've seen is Amarillo did a wastewater interceptor line connecting their wastewater plant. But this would be, they've got all the right-of-ways bought up. We've pretty much greenlighted and set a date for water to be delivered by 2038. When they first started contemplating this project, it was a $350 million project in 2015. Our estimates now are $1 billion. We've talked a couple times that putting things off generally doesn't save you money. This is almost tripled, but it will. For us, it's worth about another 3 to 4 million gallons a day in water supply from CRMWA, which means we can reduce our wells and save some of our resources. CRMWA is the largest water right holder in the entire state of Texas. They hold more water rights than anybody else. When they were looking at this, it's like their water, all the blue stuff is where their water rights are, the blue shading. They did a water supply study, and so assuming based on our current average annual growth of water consumption, assuming that 2025 was year zero and whatever water was in the aquifer in their water rights in year zero, assuming that's 100%, we know that the aquifer is not 100% full, but assuming that how much water in there equals 100% in 2025, if we continue taking, if all the cities did nothing but take water out of the aquifer and no lake water, and we continued with our current use and the current increase, which is like I think 2 or 3% a year, in 2080, there'd still be 60% of the water left.
Well, that's what I was wondering, because when they put the 2 in place, how much is it gonna pull from Borger? But you're saying you're gonna be able to reduce the wells.
Now, if
It's gonna be going somewhere else, but it's still gonna be coming out of the work.
right, and the there are local, and you listen to Chris, he talks about water movement like it's a living thing, and it pretty much is. And so just because a well 2 miles that way is depleted doesn't mean, because I mean it takes time, and that's why a lot of times you want to recharge a well, because if you're sucking, it sucks it down, but then you stop, it'll come back up. And so it's like ocean currents and things like that. So it's most average people think, well, it's dry when you can't get it, when the well stops producing water. Well, if the well's been sucking water 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for a week, it might not be, you might just have sucked all the water out of that little hole. So I mean, because it's not the aquifer is not just one big square tank, and so it flows and it moves and it seeps and it has to make its way through sand and all that stuff. So it's a lot more to it. But with CRMWA and stuff like that, we're a lot more. I mean, 2080 is a long time away, and so still having 60% capacity after 2080, assuming that we grow at their current rate and don't have any major new use coming on, or that a new use is, and like even our plants generally have become a little more efficient, with how they use water as they make investments. But so I mean, I think we're pretty good with that. So, I mean, and you have to keep in mind though too that like I know with Fermi and all that stuff, we've heard so much about data centers using water. People are freaking out about 5 million gallons a day that Amarillo signed to give up. Amarillo's peak daily demand is 45 million gallons a day. Their average like 32 million gallons a day. So 5 million more gallons a day is only like 15% more. Municipal and industrial water use in the Texas Panhandle South Plains is about 200 million gallons a day, give or take. That's only 10% of the water used. Ag is another 90%, which means that for the 200 million gallons that cities and industry use, ag is using 2.5 billion gallons a day. So people are freaking out over 5 million gallons a day when we're using almost 3 billion gallons a day. So in the scheme of things, 5 million gallons to like to you and I, like how much we use at home, that's a lot. But in the scheme of things, 5 million gallons is not nearly as much as you think it is.
Is it gonna run out?
Well, that
Sorry, I'm getting into much here.
you know, it will at some point, you know, depending on what that is. But the water supply studies are. So there's a letter. So we've got the letter from a Borger city mayor pro tem from 1976. He wrote a letter to the future citizens of Borger that went in the time capsule that was going to be open to Centennial. And he was talking about some of the investments they were making. He was talking about replacing old 2-inch water lines with new 6-inch asbestos concrete and all that stuff. And he's like, and we know the groundwater is going to be depleted. So we're pretty sure by the time you read this in 2026 that you'll be relying 100% on Lake Meredith. 50 years later, actually, Lake Meredith is becoming less reliable, and we're using more and more of the water rights. And a lot of, like, Roberts County is good because it's there's not a Roberts County, and the reason I think a lot of it's still there and why we don't have to worry, because Roberts County is very rough. There's not a lot of ag uses in Roberts County, you know, but for the most part, we're also on the northern part. Where you're seeing the aquifer run dry is on the southern part, like south of Lubbock. You know, that's where they're down to like 20 saturated feet or less. But that's at the very end, tail end, and the aquifer is just not as big there. So I personally, and which is funny, is he even mentioned in that letter too, is I do think at some point desalinization will solve everybody's water problem. The world is not short of water. It's short of fresh water. And so as you start talking nuclear fusion and cheaper electricity, that brings down the cost of desalinization significantly. And so that starts, you know, I think that's why, to me, water is an intermediate problem, like through, you know, I think within the next 50 years, we're not going to have as much, I don't think we're going to have to worry about as much because that stuff will be online. And then you'll just be building pipelines in from the coasts and you'll have lots of water, 50 to 100 years, something like that. But so I'm not so much worried about after 100 years. I'm worried about the next 50 to 75. And even right now, like you can in Midland, Odessa, in those areas, the water treatment plants, you can treat brackish like brine water now. It's getting about $1.60, $1.70 per 1,000 feet per 1,000 gallons for treatment cost. Our cost to produce water, like this doesn't include maintenance and distribution, you know, just to operate the wells and pull it out and transmit it, is somewhere around $1 a 1,000 gallons right now. So, you know, it's not quite twice as much to treat it, and that's because it used to be like 4 to 5 times to treat that. So that technology is improving. You don't have to change the filters as much. So I mean, at some point you'll reach a better point, but we're still a little bit away from that. But as being a member of CRMWA, right now our CRMWA allocation is more than our residential usage. So now it'd suck if we have to tell our industries they can't have water and they have to shut down. You know, we don't want that. But there again, our 12 million gallons a year plus another probably 5 that Phillips produces themselves is 20 million gallons a day out of 3 billion that's being taken out of the panhandle. So
Why is, and I don't know if you know, or like my friends in Emerald, their water bill's cheaper than our.
it's the trash.
Cause she like, I filled up my swimming pool and it was only this much. I'm like,
Their water rates are actually not cheaper, but their trash rate's cheaper. So like when you look at the total bill, like our base bill in the city of Borger, I think like if you have 1,000 gallon of consumption and you just the base charges and the trash and all that stuff, I think right now is $66 a month. So that's like the cheapest you can get. In Amarillo, it's the cheapest you get is like 54. So they start at $54, and then you add consumption on top of that. We start at 64, so we start about $10 higher. But of course, now we know why their trash is so cheap because apparently they weren't doing what they were supposed to do and have burned down, you know, half the county. So their trash is probably not that.
it's gonna go up.
It's not going to be cheaper much longer when they get those lawsuits and all of that stuff. But like Canyon has so we have a tiered base charge. Canyon has a tiered consumption charge. So the first 3,000 gallons are so much. Then from 3 to 10,000 gallons is so much per 1,000 gallons. Then 10 to 15 and like Canyon's water rates are about 40% higher than ours. And so, and like, Amarillo doesn't have a tough fee, but they have a drainage fee for stormwater. And so, and we don't have to deal with stormwater as much. I joke with my other city managers because cities like Amarillo, they have to worry about where to put the stormwater. We don't have to worry about that. We've got to worry about it washing the road away to Chris's wastewater plant before I get the money set aside to where I've been waiting on the grant money, thinking that we could buy another year. Or we finally found out we didn't get the grant, so I was going to try to do it with the debt issue. It's next year, and so that's. But it's where it's out to bid again because we can't wait.
Yeah.
And we have a back way out there, and I kind of knew that, which is why I haven't been. I mean, everybody's known we need to do it, and we're going to do it. But that's why I've been trying to. We've got another way, which makes it worth saving the time to try to save money if we can. But so here's the ramp up to what it's going to, because our cost, the debt port of $1 billion, our portion of that's about $48 million. It is going to require an increase in water rates. Luckily for us, we talked a little about it in the financial session. About 75 to 80% of our water use, well, actually, when we do the new rate study next year, rate analysis, I think the industry's using about 80% or 90% of our water now. So they're going to bear most of the cost of that. I don't anticipate a lot of that hitting residential customers, but rates are going to have to go up just a little bit. But we haven't raised industrial rates in 7 years, so I think that they've all been really happy about that. So I don't think we're going to get much pushback on that because they've had to increase their electric and all that stuff, and especially right now with gas being $4 a gallon, I'm not going to feel too bad about giving them a 10-cent increase next year. It's pretty piddly on them, but some of that stuff is coming. So it will take CRMWA's capacity from 65 million gallons to 112 million gallons a day. Water production and treatment. So the treatment plant is out on South Florida. That's coming into town from Panhandle. When you see it there with the Borger Bulldog water tower. We are not treating. We are chlorinating water there, but we don't technically treat it anymore because groundwater doesn't have to be treated. It's clean enough coming out of the ground. So like all the stuff inside that building, all the settling and the mineral filters and all that stuff isn't getting used, but all the water, almost all the water goes through that facility, stays in the pipes, but it gets chlorinated. So the state does require us to put a small percentage of chlorine in there to make sure it's safe. That's why a lot of times, like, you talk about Winston, one of Winston's things he always liked to do is get a bunch of different bottled water, take the labels off, and then he would take the tap water, run it through a Brita filter, and pour it in a bottle of water, and then ask everybody to taste them and see which water they like best. And almost every time, they'd all pick the Borger water over the Dasani and the Ozarka and all that. Because normally what you taste in tap water that you don't like is that chlorine that we have to put in it. But the Brita filter, like just a simple Brita filter, will take that all out, and what's left is well water. And so,
I like to take the water. Straight out the pipes, man.
I used to drink it like I remember as a little kid. Yeah. As a little kid, that's it. I was so used to it. I didn't like any other water. I wanted the tap. Now I wanted it cold, and that was back when there was lake water in it. But we also have a water lab out there, so we're one of only 2 accredited public water labs in the Panhandle. So we are the state requires us to pull samples on a regular frequency from regular different locations throughout the water system and treat and test it for bacteria. So we'll see we do several thousand tests a year, making sure that our water is safe and drinkable. But we also provide that service to other cities or other public water systems that use us. Even some that don't use us regularly, they'll use us on the weekends because since we staff the lab on Saturdays, we'll run your test on Saturday. Amarillo won't do that. So I think that is one thing. A little bit about what a water tower does. There is a purpose to water towers. So generally, water towers are what pressurize and regulate your system. So it's the gravity and the force of gravity that puts the pressure in the lines, right? And so city water systems generally are divided in what they call pressure planes. And so each water tower generally supports a pressure plane. And when you get outside of a certain distance or terrain or geography, you move over to the other pressure plane. So like we've got the 11th Street pressure plane with the water tower that's right up here by the plant. You've got the Buena Vista pressure plane with the Buena Vista water tower. So all our treated water goes up into the water tower to pressurize the system. You can pressurize the system with pumps. that gets really expensive to put that. I find it crazy. Like, has anybody been to Lubbock? Have you noticed all their new water towers? Lubbock built 8 new water towers. The reason they did that is because they had stopped maintaining their old water towers, and so none of them were in use, and so they were using pumps to pressurize all the system. With the amount of money they saved in the electric bill of running those pumps, that amount of money paid the debt payment on the debt to build 8 brand new water towers. So we just pump it up a little bit. It's intermittent.
And how long did they go doing that before they put the towers back?
Like 10 or 15 years. And it started with Jared when Jared Atkinson became the city manager. But Jared has a water background. He was water planning at the PRPC. He did a lot of that for Amarillo. So I think he was the Lubbock's previous city manager was a finance director from like Massachusetts. So skills and abilities. But that's why. So you pump the water up and then it maintains the pressure. And so, and you let it come down a little bit before, and that's the other thing they do at the water plant is they kind of maintain. They've got the gauges for all the water towers and all the ground storage tanks and the whole system, because we've got these 2 big ground storage tanks in the northwest well field that hold water and ship it down to Borger that then comes up into the towers. The big water tank you pass on your way to Dumas, if you go through Stinnett and go out to Dumas, just outside of Stinnett, there's a big water tower or a big ground water tank behind a fence. That's ours. That's the city of Borgers. That's supplying this line. These are over here supplying this line. So you use gravity as much as possible because it's cheaper. That's also why when you lose power, you don't lose water, because the pressure is still maintained as long as there's water in the water tower. We elevate about 2.25 million gallons of water in water towers. There's another 9 million gallons in storage tanks, but the crazy thing is like the ground storage tanks at the wastewater, at the water treatment plant on Florida, like the big one that says Frank Phillips College. So did you know that they're at the same elevation as the top of this water tower on 11th Street? Because Borger's in a hole. So those tanks are technically gravity pressurized because they're on a hill. So we actually have more than that. If we lose power and we want to shut off all the industry and say, sorry, you can't have water, we can probably have pressurized water for 6 to 10 days, depending on what the usage is. The problem with that, though, is when you lose power, when we get to the sewer side, you lose lift stations and wastewater treatment. And if you're using water, it's got to go somewhere. And so that creates a whole lot of other problems. But so I did want to give you a little basis on what a water tower is and why it's there and what the benefit of a water tower is. We do have to paint those periodically. They have a special coating on the inside to make sure that, the water's protected and safe. That's about a $3 million project now to freaking repaint and recoat a water tower.
How often is that?
I was gonna say how long? Yeah.
They're pretty long. I think like that they're 25 to 30 years now. Depends on some factors, but the Buena Vista ones is just, that's why it's a little faded, and but it's of course.
So do you have like a fund that you've already started putting money in for them kind of things, so that you already.
We fund about $800,000 of capital investment in the water sewer as part of our annual revenue. So then if we have surplus at the end of the year, we move it into a capital improvement fund, which is why we've not had to take out debt for water projects in a while. There would be a time when we probably have to take out some debt, but we've got a significant amount of the Northwest Wellfield was $38 million worth of debt total to build out all that. It's covered by the rates, and so $3 million would. It depends. Our reserve got up pretty good because Phillips has more than doubled the amount of water they were taking in the last 5 years, which wasn't budgeted. So, but that's also funding some of our other improvements. But we can do a little bit. For a $3 million project, I'd probably take out the loan and go ahead and do it, just so that we don't impact our smaller projects that we need. Our water line replacements and our sewer line replacements. Those are the type of things I want to fund with operating revenue. And we've done at least one project like that now for probably 10 years now almost. So from starting when we did some of the Main Street replacements down here, and we just did the main sewer line, the river crossing. We've got the cloverleaf bore that's going to be happening some. And so we have those couple 100,000 projects we do every year now, and we are keeping up with those. But there are some bigger things that we know just have to come up, and it's crazy because a brand new water tower used to be only $2 million, so now we're about to pay more to paint it than what it used to cost to build a whole new one. And I'm not sure what a new one is. the the way they do them now, like the newer ones in Plainview with the concrete base and just the elevated tower, saves some money and some things on that. But it's we've got really good water towers. I mean, they're not the most modern design, but they're tried and true. And I mean, they do the exact same thing that a new one does, but well, depending on cost. But those painters, oh man, they're getting proud of themselves. Just some by the numbers here. Just this is our year so far. So far we've treated 2.4 billion gallons of water so far already this year. Of that, 716 million came from the Northwest well field, 745 million came from the Stinnett well field, and 665 million came from CRMWA. None of it from lake water, because Nutrien doesn't even want our lake water anymore. So we're trying to hope with that. But so that's that is what makes Borger kind of unique. Most of Pampa goes through about 3 million gallons a day.
You charge back for that, don't you? Or not?
For
Well, you said like Stinnett storage tank was Borger's. Do you charge them?
they're not connected to our water system, so they have yeah. So we bought the land to supply us, and that's like Amarillo's got the Potter County well field out in Potter County and all of that stuff. So, but we have a trade agreement with like TCW for some of the water supply in the non-city areas, but mostly, and we'll talk about this when we get into water distribution, so I won't scroll there too much. But then you've got the last little bit here. So we so far this year have analyzed 9,487 water samples in the lab at the water treatment plant. And we have brought in $20,775 in additional revenue to offset our operating cost with that. So definitely, I think a little more happens out there than what people think. Leadership Borger, we don't really take a tour out there anymore because there's really only 2 rooms that are interesting. The lab, and it's kind of interesting, but it's basically an incubator and some workspace. The water treatment plant. And then the control room's kind of just some old server stacks with some old gauge wheels. I mean, you can see all the water tower and gauge things there, but that's kind of the central hub of the water system. We have some IP controls and we have RF controls, but none of our water infrastructure is connected to the outside network. They were all closed loop systems, just in case anybody's worried about that. Water distribution. So that's all of water production and treatment. So water distribution, they handle 22 water wells, 107 miles of distribution lines, 30 miles of transmission lines, 330 fire hydrants, about 6,000 water meters, and then all the associated service lines, pumps, and motors. Well, because it's weird, because I think I get confused because parks, streets is 9, distribution is 8, sewer 7. And so they're all like right there. They're all one difference, so sometimes get mixed. So that's a lot of work. That's a lot of stuff to cover for 8 guys, right? So I want to talk a little bit about how a leak works. So a normal leak is not an emergency, and we still have to comply with 811. So if it's like just a little trickle running down the alley, we have to call it, and we have to wait 72 hours before we can dig, just like anybody else. So, I get a lot of calls. Well, I called yesterday. They haven't even looked at it. Yes, they have, but I was like, I get that it's making your water wet, your alley wet, but a leak like that does not constitute an emergency, and we cannot bypass 811. Now, the picture there, that's an emergency leak.
That's the fountain coming out of the ground when you call us and say it's an emergency.
Right. That we can bypass 811 for. And so you can kind of see up here. So there's like the water main in the street, right? That's the big blue pipe. Then you've got the little service line that goes to the meter, right? And then you've got the other service line on top of that. So that's what it's calling out. You got the water main, you got the service line, you got the meter, then you've got the customer line. So most of our repairs are on the service lines, and so there's kind of an example of your typical repair where you have to put a clamp or something over it, or you cut out and replace all of it. Then you've got to flush it, and then you restore it. Depending on the leak, it can take a little bit of time. Keep in mind that the street department is not going to come put asphalt over an immediately covered hole because it is going to settle. And then you're going to be pissed off that we have to dig up the new asphalt to relay the asphalt a week later. So, our procedure is not to immediately asphalt over a water or sewer or gas repair because we do need to give it an appropriate amount of time to settle so that we don't have to repave it 3 times. So that's kind of because and we flush it. So when they have chlorine and, they disinfect a line when they make a repair. I hear a lot that, we just got such a crappy water system. There's so many leaks. When was the last time you've had a boil water notice in the city of Borger? I know. It's when the stupid backhoe from that boring company hit the line over there by the American and took out that whole side of town. And so what happens is 30 pounds of pressure. Is that the minimum or 20? 30 is normal, 20 is the minimum. 20 pounds of pressure is what the state requires because that's the amount of pressure that is enough to prevent from bacteria or any backflow getting into the line to create unhealthy growth. So most repairs are done under pressure so that you don't have to do that. But if the leak is big enough and you can't isolate it and the system loses pressure, that's when you get a boil water notice. So
It just sits there, right?
the pressure goes down and you don't know what got in the line. So they have to make the repair, they have to flush it, and then they have to wait to get the bacteriological. I have like 3 words in the whole English language that I have a hard time saying, and that's one of them, bacteriological. But you have to wait till you get a clean test to lift it. It's not because the water is contaminated, it's because it could be. And in most cases, it probably never is. But because it could be, the cities have to issue those boil water notices to make sure that you boil it before you drink. Right. But in our case, you say our system is bad, but in reality, our system is so good that we have enough isolation valves and we have enough redundancy that it can be isolated without causing pressure. And so if you can isolate it between 2 valves and you can repair it and you can completely disinfect it before you pressurize it, you don't have to have the boil water notice. Which is why we don't have boil water notices. Normal wear and tear is necessary. Well, and like I said, and I will say the last 2, and I only ever remember 2, and so the last 2 have not even been our fault. They haven't been water system failure. They've been outside third-party intervention that has caused it. So, and most of our water leaks, of course, they also do line locates. So water distribution so far this year has already done 1,209. So when people call 811, they get notified. They have to go mark water and sewer lines. So water distribution does that. That's 1,209 of those so far this year. We have had 32 mainline repairs this year, like in the street, the main line, 102 service lines. So most of the water leaks you see are the service lines going from the main to the house. So our water mains are fine. And so that's why I take a little exception when they say we've got a crappy water. We don't have we supply 12 million gallons a day. We don't have freaking boil water notices, and most of it is a service line going to an individual house. There are almost 6,000 service lines in the city of Borger. And the original service lines, most of them have been replaced, but what we're replacing now were put in the 50s and 60s. And they've just reached the a ground moves and contracts with temperature and has anybody ever tried to dig a hole in town? We've got real soft sandy dirt, right? It's full of rocks. And so those rocks over time, as it moves, they will degrade it because, service line, that service line's, it's not the thick, high pressure material like the main. It's just serving your house. So it will fail. So we're we're about 6 months through the year, so we've had about 250 total days. We've had probably that means we probably had 200, right around 150 work days, which means on average they're repairing a service line every other day. Last year, they repaired over 400 in a year. So those 8 guys were repairing on average 2 for every work day, which is probably why we're finally back down to a little more normal numbers. But most of our leaks are service lines, and that happens. And a lot of times now when we replace them, they sleeve them. So they put the new line inside an outer line to give it a little more protection from that. But there, with 6,000 services, if we on average replace 200 a year, that's still 30 years to replace every service line. And by then, it'll be time to go back around and start the cycle over. So we're doing good on water mains. Our water system is good. Like I said, if you are inconvenienced by an interruption in water supply, I guarantee you we're working hard to make it short. I mean, those guys, they bust their butts so much that it's hard to keep these new employees on because they all take that job thinking it's going to be good, and then they get in that hole, and the 2 weeks later they're gone. And so Derek and we got 4 pretty good guys that have been there for a while, and I can't ding them too much because the turnover's been it's like the same spot that keeps turning over. They just don't stay because everybody thinks they want a job, and they're like, wait, I got to work.
It's 10 degrees outside with water flowing everywhere and it's dark and they don't want to be out there.
You say you're looking for a job. That's
Generations.
Yeah. So now I want to talk a little bit about sewer. So sewer collection. So this is kind of a little overview of how sewer works. So you flush the toilet or whatever you do, it goes through your service line into the sewer main. The sewer main is then connected to manholes because sewer is gravity fed, right? So sewer pipes are at a 3% incline to make sure that it always flows. And so you go 3% from manhole to manhole, and then the next joint goes down and goes down until you get so deep that you have to have a lift station to lift it back up and start the process all over again until eventually it gets to the sewer plant. This is why sewer is more expensive to put in because the grade has to be, the state regulates the grade. If it's too flat, it backs up, it won't move. And if it's too steep, it costs you more because you're going to have more lift stations because now you're getting too deeper too quick. And so you can't just lay sewer pipe. You can't just dig a hole and lay sewer pipe. It's got to be graded. You got to have the base compacted correctly and all that stuff to lay it. The only good thing is we don't have to worry about 811 on sewer because any sewer leak is considered an emergency because sewer is raw sewage is a health hazard. So a lot of times if you get upset that they're fixing the sewer quicker than the water, that's why, because a sewer leak is a health hazard and avoids 811 immediately. So we have 29 lift stations. To put that in comparison, Amarillo is 10 times bigger and has 54. So if Amarillo was built on our terrain, they would have 300. They only have 54. So now, granted, most of Amarillo's 54 lift stations are ginormous. They're probably all closer to the size of the one on Weatherly Creek out on 136, to where we have some pretty small lift stations that just service small areas. But that's how sewer works. The wastewater collection team, I need to update that because we added the one lift station, which is why we have the Tractor Supply lift station wasn't on my old list. So it says 28, but we have 29 lift stations, 1,526 manholes. So every year, that big white truck with the nose on it, every year that will go and clean out every single manhole once because stuff settles, right? So and when stuff settles and isn't moving is when it goes septic. You've heard that term. That's why they call them septic tanks. And that's when you get all the sewer gas and all the smells and all that crap. So they do clean all those out. There are 84 miles of sewer mains. And then your pump lines, because the sewer mains are the gravity mains. That's not the force mains, which are what connect the lift station to the next. Most lift stations will pour into a manhole at some point at a higher elevation, and then it starts the process all over. I do want to talk about a few things here. The sewer is for wastewater, toilet paper, and normal human waste, not chemicals, not oil, uh, medication, batteries, toys. Flushable wipes are not always flushable, especially in large quantities.
They're not
Hey.
flushable.
We ban them in our.
You know, so a flushable wipe is technically considered flushable one at a time. And then normally, hopefully, a shower afterwards so you get all that extra water to wipe it down. But they do not degrade. When they get to the frickin' wastewater plant, they get stuck on all the screens and then have to get, or in the bottom of the manhole, or compacted with, if there is something that's stopping it up a little bit, it'll catch and make the stop worse. So, really, if I were you, they've gotten pretty cheap, and I know they used to be kind of faux pas, but they're kind of the new trendy thing. A little bidet seat on your toilet, probably better than anything, because then you're not putting anything solid or.
Just throw them in your trash can then. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're gonna use them, throw them in your trash.
Well, because like the solid waste that comes out of a human will eventually break down. And when we get to the plant treatment process, it's the bugs that are naturally in us that break it down. So a true clog or some impaction with true human waste will eventually improve. All the artificial stuff is what causes the problems.
They're not better for the environment.
They are not better for the environment. Toilet paper is designed to degrade and go into little bits with lots of water. If you want to use the RV toilet paper, it even disintegrates even better, which is why they sell it for RVs. But toilet paper, yes, flushable, and because flushable wipes used to be, they were one-offs. They were like for the baby or something like that. The problem is now they've become like commonplace to where people are using them every time they go to the bathroom. And they're not. They will cause a problem in your home plumbing system before they cause a problem in our plumbing system. So I mean, they're really not good necessarily for you first, but they will cause a problem in there. So, grease, paper towels, diapers, feminine hygiene projects, and debris should not go into the sewer. So that's why the city code requires restaurants to have a grease trap to prevent the grease from going into the sewer. So the same is true for residences. We just don't require residential grease traps, but you should not pour if you've got a deep fryer on your counter, you should not pour it down the drain. I had to clean the grease trap at the Morley one time. Man, that's like,
It's nasty.
oh, I'd help the crew clean out a manhole twice before I'd clean out a grease trap again. Oh my God.
It becomes rancid.
Oh, it's
Nasty.
yeah. So
Rancid.
and so because those can clog lines. If you do have a sewer backup, depending on what neighborhood you're in, especially if it's older, you can call us. They'll come out and run the line. Make sure it's not on our end. It's never a bad idea to call us to do that before you call the plumber. We will not pay you if you call the plumber and then it turns out to be on our side. I can't pay that sewer bill for everybody that does that. Make one call up here. The sewer guys will go out. They'll run the line, make sure it's not on our side, and then you can call the plumber. If it was on our side, we'll clear it right up. They're really good. They do that a lot. They don't complain. They go right out there. So if you have a backup, unless you know it's your problem, I mean, normally if like your kitchen sink's backing up, it's probably not our line. If your toilet's backing up, it could be our line. Let us run it. But, a kitchen sink with a garbage disposal, I can probably guarantee you it's not our line. It's somewhere there. But don't be afraid. You call utility billing for that. They'll put out the work order just like anything else. But the wastewater crew will go run your line. So before you call a plumber, call them. We'll send them out there. If it doesn't fix it, now you know it's on your side. But don't call me after you didn't call us and want me to pay your plumbing bill. We have this thing called sovereign immunity, and when you're out money, I know that you don't like it when I tell you that, but we don't have to pay it. And if I did pay everybody that did that, the city would be broke. And so, there again, it is ratepayer or taxpayer money, so we have to be a little careful about that. So far this year, the water crew's already cleaned 327 manholes. So that's about 2 a day that they're cleaning. They've completed 2,732 work orders. And so that a lot of that are those running those lines for people that think they might have a leak. I mean, see, they do that a lot. So I'd a lot rather send them out and it not be our problem, but I'd rather be certain before you call the plumber. So this is the aerial view of the water treatment plant out there. So the wastewater treatment plant, we treat about 1.3 million gallons of wastewater daily. It has a nameplate capacity of 3 million gallons should it work at 100% efficiency. It is built in two different stages. I can guarantee you it won't operate at 100% efficiency anymore, but that is the nameplate capacity. The wastewater lab out there, they conduct more than 2,000 tests monthly because we have to test the wastewater and the treatment process to make sure that the bugs and all of that stuff are in the right. Everything they do out there is to make sure that that wastewater is the best home environment for the bugs. And so they test the oxygen levels and do all of that stuff to make sure that we've made them a nice little home so that they can eat and break down all of the waste. We do use our treated reclaimed water to nutrient uses that. We'll talk about that in a little minute. So what we have is called a conventional activated sludge process. So you can see that the influent comes in and it goes through screening, gets large pieces out, goes through a grit remover, and then goes to a primary clarifier, which where the first round of stuff gets settled. Then it gets moved into the aeration basins, which for us are those big racetracks. It's not a basin, but that's what those if you're out there and you see those big wheels spinning, that's what it's doing, is aerating the water to make sure that you got oxygen in the water for the little bugs to breathe. Then it goes through a secondary clarifier, and then you pull the water off of the top of that, which is the treated effluent, which then gets chlorine added to be disinfected, and then it can be released or reused. The sludge then goes into drying pads or ponds, bins. They're big concrete lines. This one's up on a hill, and it's not used as much as the primary ones down there. But the sludge goes in there and it dries out for a period of time, and then we scoop it up with a skid steer, put it in a roll off, and it gets taken to the landfill. And so that sludge is what's left of your flushable wipes that made it through the system and everything else. Now the crazy part about this is that water that's coming out is technically cleaner than the groundwater you drink because everything has been settled out of it. Now, I get that nobody wants to think about that because of where it came from, but it is technically chemically cleaner than the groundwater because the groundwater still got all the dissolved solids and all the minerals and all that stuff in it, and by this process, almost all of it is settled out. Now, if you think it's, that bad, it can't be that bad because if we ever shut it off, the ranchers downstream from that discharge get all pissed off that there's nothing for the cows to drink. So you're probably eating, cow meat that's been watered by effluent. You got influent coming in, effluent going out. It's actually pretty good. We take leadership Borger there because everybody finds the bugs and that process more interesting than just, this is where we take out the minerals and this is where we chlorinate it, Seeing all of this is more interesting. We always handle our tour out there. But it is, really pretty efficient, considering that this process has been around probably since the 40s. And really, new wastewater treatment plants, for the most part, follow this same. Some of the motors and technology and things a little different. But, if we were building a new wastewater plant today, I doubt it would be much different. Now, the other way of doing this, like what smaller cities do, is they do a lagoon. And so you generally have two lagoons, and all of your wastewater goes into one lagoon. When it's filled, you divert the wastewater into the second lagoon. And while the second lagoon is filling up over the course of several months, the first lagoon evaporates. And then you go in and you dig it out. And then you're ready to divert the wastewater back into that lagoon when the other lagoon is open. That has a very you can understand why that has a very limited capacity. So most cities of any size will have some sort of activated sludge or some sort of active process so that you can handle a varying amount of wastewater and it be continuous. But now you can also see that if the wastewater plant, we're treating 1.2 million gallons of water, we got a capacity for 3 million gallons of water. So if the power goes out, well, first of all, the lift stations are going to fill up first. And the lift station probably, depending on which lift station, might have extra capacity for anywhere from 200 to maybe, I don't know, not a lot of water. I mean, the Weatherly Creek Station, that's probably got the biggest wet well, but it's still not a lot of water. So the lift stations will overflow first because with the lift stations not running, there's nothing going into the plant. But if the lift stations are running and it's still going into the plant, you'd have about 1 million gallon capacity before it starts overflowing, assuming it's not raining. So when we look at emergency planning and redundancy going forward, that's why we generally prioritize power generation and backup generations on the wastewater side first. Because it's not going to help me to keep giving you fresh water if I've got no way to treat or handle the effluent water. We do have backup generators, and all the lift stations are handled to be able to convert over to a backup generator. But we have 2 of those, so if it's a widespread power outage, you're just out. It is an interesting process out there. On their website, if you ever want to see anything, you can call them. They almost all of them like showing off their stuff. They don't like completely being surprised, but they like being showed off. The wastewater guys are a little different, like at the water treatment plant, because they, like your porta potty companies will come out there and dump, so they're used to generally dealing with people. So you could show up out there, but if you want to call anybody, they all, especially at the plants, those people generally take pride in their work, and they understand the importance and in a lot of ways it is kind of cool. It's there's definitely some science behind it, and so if you want to go see any of that stuff, call them up. And the wastewater treatment plant does not smell as bad as everybody thinks it does. Most of the time, it doesn't smell hardly at all.
Unless you get by the slope.
Depending on the heat of the day and the direction of the wind.
There's other places in the city that smell worse. Yes. I forget because you get used to smelling. I'm like,
Yeah.
it's just a mixture of smells until somebody comes in. Well, I'm on vacation now, so I know when I go back Monday.
Yeah.
Yes.
He works at the transfer station, so we're talking about solid waste. So, and solid waste smell to me is also very temperature dependent. It smells a lot different above 90 degrees than it does between 70 and 80, and then it smells a lot different below 70. And then of course, if it's cold enough, it doesn't. So we did a partner with Nutrien several years back. They paid for a pipeline from the wastewater plant to Nutrien to use our effluent, our treated effluent. So they use it to supplement their cooling and their process water. They're not using quite it. They used to use it to mix with the lake water to get more out of it, and so now that they don't have lake water, they're not using as much because they don't blend it as much with the groundwater. It was more benefit because the effluent for them is actually too clean, and the lake water's too dirty. But the lake water's so salty it doesn't even mix well with the effluent anymore, and so they're using about, so far this year we've sold 70 million gallons of effluent to them. So our target is 85%. So you can see, and now keep in mind that some of that is off because they were down for turnaround the first 2 months of the year, so they weren't using any water with their turnaround. So they're back up to using 60 to 80% of our effluent. So they're still taking a lot, and every gallon that they use of effluent offsets a gallon of fresh water. So so far this year we've treated 201 million gallons, and they've taken 70. So they've taken overall about 40%. And it always goes up in the summer when it gets hotter, and they're using their water usage change, which you can kind of see the little fluctuations in that. We've analyzed 15,643 wastewater samples in the wastewater lab. So they definitely are busy people too. And the wastewater, I think everybody worry about the plant because of what you think you deal with, but it's yes, the water treatment plant is probably the easiest, but it's the most technical. The wastewater plant's not super hard work. It's basic maintenance and some testing. Now, I do joke when I'm out there. I normally joke because they got a new skid steer here a while back, and when I got there, it was always funny because my joke is how they used to teach everybody to run the skid steer is you'd learn pretty quick not to tilt the bucket too far back because when you're picking up the sludge, because then it's all on you, and so you normally only make that mistake once. Then we finally, we've been catching up on some equipment, and I budgeted for one, and I didn't think anything about it. And I was out there after they bought it, and this new one's got an enclosed cab. And I'm like, well, how are you going to teach them how to freaking use it? they're going to learn from that mistake now. Now all they got to do if they make that mistake is just hose off the the backhoe. But I joke about that. So, but
You
that
gotta stand out there and still smell it, or they hose it.
But that project, so we gave Nutrient a credit. They got cheaper Effluent until the cost of the pipeline was paid off. The cost of the pipeline is now paid off. Effluent is the cheapest water. I think it's it and raw lake water we charge the same rate for right now. So just a couple of things, for y'all to keep in mind. What you can do to help on both sides. So on the water side, use WaterSmart to watch for unusual usages. Make sure that you're catching leaks early. Report leaks or unusual water conditions promptly. We talked about that. We can work through a whole lot of things if we know sooner. Don't wait till your bill's past due. And if the leak's on our side, we want to fix it too. I mean, our popular to contrary belief, our job is our guys do not want to go out there and they don't want to find it on your side. They want to find it, and they don't really care whose side it's on. It's not like they're trying to kick everything to you. They want to find the leak. Call 811 before digging, and remember that applies to us too. And city is responsible to the meter. It's your responsibility from the meter on. On the wastewater side, do not flush wipes, even if labeled flushable. Keep grease, paper towels, diapers, and debris out of the sewer system. Protect cleanouts and utility access points. A lot of homes, older homes probably don't have a cleanout, but you want to keep those accessible. A lot of times, if we're running the main, or we don't see anything, I mean, our guys are nice enough. They can help you find your clean out, or they can help you open it if you don't have a tool to open it. I mean, they're not gonna throw you under the bus, but they're not gonna dig up your yard, and we're not gonna go to Ace and buy PVC pipe to repair your line. But we'll take reasonable steps to help you find what you need. And small household choices can prevent large system problems. In most cases, especially now, when we're clearing the line because the line's backed up, it's probably flushable wipes or something that got flushed that shouldn't have been flushed. So just kind of key takeaways for tonight. As a whole, utilities are connected systems. Utility billing, water supply, treatment, storage, distribution, collection, treatment, and reuse. Our water supply is pretty diverse. We've got the 3 different well fields and the 2 different sources from CRMWA, so I'm in really good shape there. CRMWA 2 is that major long-range investment intended to improve supply capacity and system redundancy. That's coming up, so most of any rate increases in the future will probably be going to that, which is to make sure that we have water. The work residency at the surface is only part of the work happening underground and behind the scenes. And again, I have repeated this. I think I probably have said this in every session, but there again, especially this department more than a lot, if they do their jobs right, you never see it. It's when something goes wrong is when you see it, but you don't see the 12,000 lab tests being conducted at the wastewater plant, making sure that the wastewater continues to get discharged. You don't see the 105 service lines that they've already replaced this year, unless it was your service line. You don't see, but you might see the leak, and remember, your leak might not be the only leak, so it might have to get in line. And if it's not an emergency, I get that having an alley is inconvenient for it being wet for you, but you're not there's over 100 miles of pipe in this city, and your little 200 feet, just like streets, your one pothole, there's 119 miles of streets. And then lastly, your choices, on leaks and all that stuff impact all that. And if you can't turn your meter and you're going on vacation and you want to turn your meter off, you can call up here. We'll send somebody out to turn your meter off. When you get back, you can call back up here. We'll go out and send somebody to turn it on. Now, it might not be that very minute, but I mean, we do things like that all the time. I've had to call. I was fixing my sprinkler system and busted off a valve, and I couldn't get. I'm one of those with the stupid 1.5 meter, and I couldn't my stupid little rebar valve turner wouldn't turn that stupid valve, and I'm freaking out as a whole 1.5 inch of water's flowing down the calling like. And of course, it's bad for me because, I'm like the boss and I'm like, help. But now I know Eddie's got his little big gas turner that he confiscated that he made when he was working in the utility department. I know where it's at, just a block from me now. So, but we do things like that. And I've only ever used that once, but I tell you that it's a pretty regular thing. We do have the after hour numbers. The phone system at City Hall is the easiest right now because after hours, if you call 0900 when the phone system picks up, you don't have to remember the number. it remembers it for you. You press 4 for water emergencies, press 5 for sewer emergencies. And so that way I try to tell everybody after hours, if it's not an emergency, dial 0900 and it can get you to dispatch, it can get you to police, fire, water, and sewer emergencies. And you don't have to remember any other number other than 0900. The guys have the cell phones, they rotate who has that cell phone to pick it up. So they've been fast for me, and when I call, I don't normally tell them who I am. And so I mean, I can judge them for what their real response is, and B, I don't expect special treatment. Actually, I don't want it, because if anybody saw me getting it,
You're gonna see it on Facebook. Sorry. I'm sorry.
You will.
Just because you say something and it may be a little rude doesn't mean it's wrong, but I'll give myself.
well, and like in the Metroplex, like with city managers and stuff, the big debate is on like residency requirements. Most cities require city managers to live in the city, and there's a lot of the Metroplex cities and stuff where they think that's outdated thinking, and they don't want that. I'm like, oh my God, I wouldn't. I mean, because I remember the last city manager that they let stay, and city charter technically requires it, but they let one stay outside the city limits, and oh my God. I mean, people saw him take his trash into the city and put it in a city dumpster, so he didn't have to pay, for the private trash out in the county and things. And then you get all that. Well, of course you're going to raise our rates. You don't have to pay our rates. I wouldn't want to not live in the city that I'm the city manager of, because I wouldn't want to hear all that. It's easy, and the only problem is now, as I say, every time I go on a walk, I like it. I try to walk for exercise, but it's not good for me because I see all this crap, and then I try to be like, okay, how big of a problem is this? Do I call someone now? Do I jot it down? Do I wait for a director's meeting? and well, this is only one street, so. Other questions on utilities? I would imagine that you're much more informed than you were, because most people don't know hardly any of this.